Black femicide refers to the systemic and disproportionately high rates of violence and murder against black women and girls. This tragic phenomenon is rooted in intersecting forms of discrimination, including racism, sexism, and socio-economic inequality, making it a critical point of discussion in understanding broader social justice issues. Recognizing and addressing black femicide is vital as it highlights the vulnerabilities faced by black women and underscores the need for targeted interventions to protect and uplift this marginalized group. The significance of understanding black femicide cannot be overstated. It is a manifestation of both racial and gender-based violence, pointing to deep-seated societal biases and structural failings. Raising awareness about this issue is crucial in advocating for policies and practices that aim to prevent violence and ensure justice for victims. Moreover, it helps in deconstructing stereotypes and misconceptions around black women that perpetuate violence and discrimination. A real-world example illustrating this point is the case of Breonna Taylor, a black woman fatally shot in her home by police officers in Louisville, Kentucky. Her death ignited a nationwide conversation on the lack of safety black women face, even in personal spaces. Similarly, the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous black women, often underreported and underinvestigated, showcases systemic neglect and violence based on intersecting racial and gender identities. Opinions supporting the urgency of addressing black femicide emphasize the need for a nuanced approach in social justice movements. Advocates argue that focusing solely on racial or gender violence without acknowledging their intersection fails to protect those most at risk. Comprehensive strategies and community-driven solutions are often cited as essential to making meaningful progress. However, the conversation around black femicide faces challenges and controversies. Some argue that the term femicide itself may narrow the broader conversation about violence in the black community, potentially alienating allies. Others might contend that the focus should be on intraracial violence more broadly, rather than emphasizing gender-specific aspects. Alternative viewpoints sometimes suggest poverty or lack of education as primary factors, without considering systemic inequalities. Understanding black femicide is integral to broader discussions on racial justice and gender equality. It connects to issues like policing practices, community investment, and cultural attitudes towards black women, influencing strategies aimed at societal transformation. By acknowledging and addressing black femicide, we foster a more comprehensive and inclusive approach to human rights and equality advocacy. The heading Historical Context and Root Causes delves into understanding the underlying factors contributing to the phenomenon of black femicide. Black femicide refers to the systematic and deliberate killing of black women and girls, often rooted in racial, gender, and social inequities. Examining the historical context is vital as it uncovers how deeply entrenched systemic racism, sexism, and misogynoir, a specific hatred directed at black women, have perpetuated cycles of violence against black women. Understanding the historical context is crucial because it highlights how historical injustices, such as slavery, Jim Crow laws, and continued racial discrimination, have marginalized black women. These conditions have fostered environments where violence against them is normalized or inadequately addressed. For instance, during slavery in the United States, black women were subjected to severe abuse, their bodies commodified, and their humanity denied. This dehumanization has had lingering effects, affecting the socio-economic status and legal protections afforded to black women today. One real-world example illustrating this point is the higher rates of domestic violence and homicide that black women face compared to their white counterparts. Studies have shown that black women are disproportionately affected by intimate partner violence, often linked to economic disenfranchisement and lack of access to resources. Another example is the lower media coverage and societal focus on missing black women, highlighting a systemic indifference that hinders justice and awareness. There is widespread support for the idea that addressing black femicide requires confronting these historical and social injustices. Advocates argue for policy changes, increased community resource, and broader societal recognition of the unique vulnerabilities black women face. However, challenges persist, such as underreporting of violence due to distrust in law enforcement or fear of perpetuating stereotypes about black communities. Additionally, some may contend that focusing heavily on race-specific issues can overshadow broader discussions about gender violence, while others argue that an intersectional approach is necessary to fully address the disparities faced by Black women. This point is interconnected with issues of policing, legal justice, and community support systems. Addressing the root causes involves unraveling complex societal structures that contribute to Black femicide, and recognizing these connections is vital for effective intervention and policy formulation. Understanding historical context not only informs public discourse, but also guides meaningful change in combating this grievous issue. Statistical overview and patterns refer to the collection and analysis of data to understand the frequency, distribution, and trends of Black femicide. Black femicide, the targeted killing of Black women and girls, is a pressing and underreported crisis. The statistical overview offers a factual landscape of how pervasive and dire the situation is, shedding light on patterns that might otherwise remain obscured. Understanding these statistics is crucial as it highlights the magnitude and specific circumstances surrounding the violence faced by Black women, differentiating it from broader categories of gender-based violence. It underscores systemic issues like racial and gender bias in society and law enforcement, and helps inform targeted interventions or policies aimed at reducing such violence. For instance, data from the Violence Policy Center showed that Black women are disproportionately affected by fatal domestic violence. In many instances, these women are killed by male acquaintances or within the context of intimate partner violence. Another study by the CDC highlighted that Black women are more frequently slain at a young age compared to their white counterparts, indicating a systemic failure in protecting these vulnerable individuals early on. Supporters advocate for more research and resources, citing these statistics as evidence of the urgent need for reform in law enforcement practices, community programs, and supportive services for Black women. Some argue it's crucial to amplify these voices and stories to bring about social and legal change. However, challenges arise in the collection and interpretation of this data. Underreporting and misclassification are significant issues, often due to the racial and gender biases in data collection, which can result in an incomplete picture. Critics might argue that focusing solely on Black femicide could divert resources from broader domestic violence initiatives, or misinterpret such an approach as racially exclusionary, rather than addressing the unique intersectionality faced by Black women. Statistical analysis doesn't just spotlight the issue, but feeds into broader discussions about racial inequality, policy reform, and the protection of vulnerable communities. It compels authorities and society to reckon with the systemic structures that perpetuate violence against Black women, influencing everything from public policy to community-based initiatives, thus playing a pivotal role in shaping the comprehensive approach needed to tackle this issue effectively. Through a detailed understanding of these patterns, efforts can be more strategically and sensitively aligned with the ultimate goal of eradicating Black femicide. The concept of societal and cultural impacts in relation to Black femicide relates to the ways in which the systemic and often brutal violence against Black women affects the broader social and cultural frameworks within which they exist. Black femicide refers specifically to the deliberate and systemic killing of Black women, often a result of deeply embedded racial and gender biases. This point is significant to the main topic, as it highlights how the violence against Black women extends beyond individual cases and alters societal dynamics and perceptions. Essentially, when a demographic feels perpetually unsafe, this breeds a culture of fear, silence, and marginalization. Moreover, the cultural narrative that either implicitly condones or ignores such violence exacerbates the already severe isolation experienced by Black women, further entrenching disparities in visibility and justice. One real-world example of societal impact is the media's portrayal of Black femicide, or rather, the lack thereof. Disproportionately, cases involving Black women receive less coverage, perpetuating a cycle of invisibility and neglect. This influences public perception and policymaking, resulting in inadequate resources allocated to addressing these crimes. Another example is community responses, such as grassroots movements and digital campaigns like #SayHerName, which strive to raise awareness and challenge the systemic structures permitting such violence. These movements emphasize storytelling and advocacy, seeking to change the cultural narrative and demonstrate resilience despite pervasive adversity. Many supporters assert that understanding and addressing the societal and cultural impacts of black femicide is crucial for fostering real equality and justice. They argue that elevating the stories of victims and recognizing the intersectional nature of their oppression is vital for societal growth. Conversely, challenges and controversies include skepticism over the framing of these issues. Some critics question the focus on race and gender as intersecting factors, perceiving it as divisive or detracting from broader conversations on violence. There's also the potential for cultural pushback from those unwilling to confront deep-seated prejudices within societal institutions. Ultimately, the societal and cultural impacts of black femicide are intrinsically linked to other facets of the issue, such as legal justice and public policy. The way a society views and reacts to the murder of black women informs its legal processes and political priorities. Thus, tackling these impacts is essential for any comprehensive strategy aimed at eradicating black femicide and establishing an equitable society. This interplay affects the broader narrative and perpetuates cycles of violence that transcend individual cases, impacting generations to come.